Was it acceptable that my professor only chose to curve some students? That's not grading on a curve. That's cooking the books so she looks like a good professor. I'm sure there's plenty of academic bodies at your school that would be very interested in hearing about this curve. Mention talking to the dean about it and see if they squirm. I used to be a college professor, and this reminded me of a situation. Student 1 really cared about the material and really wanted to learn. She came to office hours frequently, asked good questions, but struggled on exams. At the end of the term she had something like an 89.2%. Student 2 was a jag-off. Did the bare minimum, rarely came to class, but did great on exams, finished the term with an 89.5%. In my mind I kept trying to justify giving student 1 an A and student 2 a B. We didn't do plus, but there wasn't anything in my syllabus about participation or attendance. If the grades were flipped, I probably would have just said 89.5 was my rounding cutoff. I ended up giving both students As. Looking back, student 2 should have just been given the opportunity to test out of the class and not had to waste the time or money. They don't call that grading to a curve. What you experienced is known as academic fraud. It likely was tied to some type of performance metric. Talk to the dean's office that the professor works under. I'm dealing with something similar in my job currently. The amazing thing is that the professor forwarded the whole email chain to us. If they hadn't done that, then we might not have caught the issue. The dean can make grade changes for the class at my college. They will have the authority to correct this situation. There isn't really a set of ethical standards for setting grades most places. And some teachers will add to certain students depending on outside factors. Personally, if I'm going to curve the grade, one will pick the problem's most people got wrong and make it extra credit. This rewards people who put in extra effort, doesn't hurt people who couldn't figure it out, and also doesn't give free points to someone who put zero effort into the exam. I don't like just adding points, because then someone who didn't even show up can get some points. And that seems silly. Personally, I don't like to curve individual exams unless something is very wrong with it. But at the end of the semester I will look at final grades of students who are close to a higher grade, and if they worked hard and tried, I will inflate the grade just enough for them to get the higher letter. Teachers can do subjective things like this if they want. If you feel it is unfair and don't mind getting the teacher into trouble, complain to administration. Teachers are easily bullied into changing grades, especially if parents get involved. The downside of this is the teacher might consciously or subconsciously grade you more harshly in the future if you create problems for them. Oh, well, I believe that's unfair and not allowed. Let's go to the dean to check. I bet you'll have that a pretty quick. Seems to me your professor just lowered the requirements to get a B, but not the requirements for an A. So people with a B might get a B. People with a B might get a B+. But people who already have a B+ do not get an A. Since the B/A threshold has not changed, depending on how drastic that change is, this can be an alright thing to do. Increasing the B range by a few points are extremely dodgy. Professor here. Just because your letter grade didn't change doesn't necessarily mean that a curve wasn't applied. There are many ways that grades can be curved, but one simple one is to provide extra points or adjust grade thresholds. For example, let's say that you need to score 90% or higher overall to get an A. To curve the grades up, that threshold could be reduced to 89%. If you had an 89% before, hooray! Now you have an A. On the other hand, if you had an 88%, unfortunately you're still short of cutoff, and so you don't see a change in your grade. So in summary, students who are close to the boundary between two grades are likely to benefit more from a curve up. That's just the nature of discrete grades. I've never heard of this type of curve.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.